If you are worried that you are not consuming fiber and your gut microbiome is going to get ruined, or if you're worried about the animal deaths in a carnivore diet or when you are eating heavy meat based, or if you're worried about the content in the movie Game Changers, where plant based diets show or prove that they're healthier, you will want to watch this interview because we discuss all of that and more. Hey guys, my name is Judy Cho and I'm board certified in holistic nutrition. And I have a private practice where we've worked with over 2,000 clients and patients, helping them get to root cause healing. And we often start with the Carnivore Cures all meat elimination diet. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Zoë Harcombe, and she shares a little bit about her plant-based journey or her vegetarian vegan journey. And then she shares how she pivoted to a lower carb diet, why she did it, what health effects she had and what has improved. And then we dig into a lot of the mistruths or the myths about a vegetarian diet, why it's beneficial, the blue zones, or in terms of the Mediterranean diet, why it's healthier or why we don't think it's healthier, why fiber is not needed, what is really needed for optimal health, and what you can do as a person that wants to eat the best way and how you can easily see what is truth and what is not. Before we get into the interview, please make sure to like and subscribe as this allows my content to reach more people. Okay, let's get right into the interview. Hi, Dr. Zoë Harcombe. I'm super excited to have you on my channel. I've heard and followed your work for quite some time now. And I've heard such wonderful things about you. Then I saw many of your lectures and I totally get it. And so I am so excited for more of my community to get to know you more. If you can introduce yourself to the people that are listening and watching.
Thank you very much for having me. Okay, so my history is I'm a numbers person. I did maths and economics at Cambridge, so the maths side of economics. I then got what my mum would call a proper job, proper career to start with. I started off in management consultancy, working for an organization called the LEK Partnership, which I understand you have worked for as well at some point in the past. I then joined Mars, the candy company, so I've worked for Big Food. So I know it from the inside, and I've worked for GlaxoSmithKline. So I've also worked for Big Pharma from the inside, and then moved to Wales to be with my now husband and got a couple of jobs working in Wales. And I ended up as HR director, human resources director. So I was head of people for big organizations. I've had the good fortune of traveling around the world with that career, working in the Far East, Europe, the Americas, Canada, really enjoying a very good sort of first career. And then 2009, decided I wanted a second career. And by that point, I'd already written 3 books. And they started to do okay, I guess. But I thought they might do well enough that I could actually make this new passion my vocation. So since then, I've been working in the field of diet and health. And if I sit next to somebody at a dinner party now and they say, "What do you do?" I've got a variety of answers. Sometimes I say I read, write, and talk in the field of diet and health, which sums up what I do. Sometimes I say I'm a world expert on saturated fat. That usually shuts them up. I could pick any one thing, because I might say I write diet books or something, but that was quite a long time ago. So that's me up to date.
That's so fascinating. I also came from the management consultant world, so it's so fascinating. I'm curious, what made you have or decide to have a second career, especially in diet and nutrition?
Yeah, good question, because actually the two were running in parallel. So my first introduction to anything diet and health was my brother developing type 1 diabetes when he was 15 and I was 13. So immediately the family diet changed. The advice back then was actually not too bad. It was really the low fat, high carb was just starting to take off, but it hadn't kind of come into type 1 diabetes advice. So I remember the doctor taking the family to one side saying, these high teas that you're having with scones and sandwiches and cake and all that's all got to stop. It's very much meat and 2 veg. Which was actually pretty good advice at the time, but very, very soon the bad advice came in. And unfortunately, my brother is living with the consequences of that bad advice today. During that interim period, I guess like a lot of teenagers, particularly teenage girls, I was probably, I don't know, half a stone, we call it, 5, 10 pounds overweight as a teenager, puppy fat, you'd call it nowadays. But you see a diet book and it says eat less, do more, cut calories, go low fat. Low fat, you then work out, is necessarily high carb. So you just start going down the wrong route. So end up at Cambridge University, feeling quite addicted to carbohydrates. And I was the college president in my final year. And in my second year, I was the women's officer. And I was called up to, it's a collegiate system at Cambridge. So you've got Cambridge University, but you've got the individual college that you attend. So I was the women's officer for the college, and I would go up to Cambridge to get the training along with the other women's officers. And I remember getting this stuff on eating disorders and people feeling addicted to food and perhaps eating too much one day and then not enough the next day and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, crikey, that's what I'm doing, but I'm sure nobody else is doing that. And of course, middle class, high achieving, female in the college. I mean, I remember saying, if you want any of the information, you know, it's up in my room. If you want to keep it secret, I can just put it in your pigeonhole. Just let me know. There were only 22 women in my year, and I think 21 came to see me. So it was incredibly prevalent. And then I became fascinated in, why is this the case? And I started looking into, I guess, that $1 million question. And that actually became the title of my first book. So my first book was called Why Do You Overeat When All You Want Is to Be Slim? And it was trying to understand food cravings. And after over a decade of research, and I was working in the States at this time, which was really, really helpful because the States was way ahead of the UK in a number of conditions that I suddenly realized were very, very pertinent to food cravings. So I looked at it psychologically. And obviously we eat because we're upset, we eat because we're angry. We've been conditioned to eat on occasion reasons since we were toddlers. We have Christmas, we eat. We have Halloween, we eat. We have birthdays, we eat. You know, that the fake food industry makes sure that that connection is there. So there's all the psychological reasons and the celebration reasons. But in reading some of these groundbreaking books, and I was reading about things like Candida albicans, yeast syndrome, I was therefore writing about gut flora 25 years ago, long before it was a big thing nowadays, and I identified 3 conditions, and I just had books all over my apartment that were talking about how these particular conditions were driving food cravings. And the 3 conditions was the gut flora imbalance, particularly with Candida albicans, also known as the yeast syndrome. The second one was hypoglycemia, so low blood glucose levels, because people were eating carbohydrates, their bodies weren't taking the right amount of glucose out of the bloodstream. It's a very delicate mechanism, and people would then realize that they want more carbohydrates when they've just eaten some. So you have some M&Ms, and then you have a high sugar and then a low sugar, and then you want more M&Ms, and you're in that cycle for the rest of the day. And then the third condition that was really interesting, there's some brilliant books on this, people like Dr. Richard McCanus, Not All in the Mind. Food intolerance is really interesting. Not allergy, we're not talking nut allergy or shellfish allergy, but food intolerance, which is, in a nutshell, the body having too much of the same food too often. And so, of course, the things that we're most likely to become intolerant to are the things that we eat all the time, which are flour, dairy, sugar, and the various versions thereof of those, hence the muffins, biscuits, cakes, cookies, etc. So that was how my interest started. I wrote the first book in 2004, so that's 20 years ago this year. And then my publisher asked for another one. So I did one called Stop Counting Calories and Start Losing Weight in 2008. And I did a recipe book with that, which was real food managed carb. I mean, it was kind of carb meals or fat meals. And we can go into that if it's of any interest. It wasn't taking people away from carbs, but it was helping people to realize that if you talk to people about proteins in everything, so let's just cover it now, proteins in everything. So you're going to end up having fat protein as the base of your meal, or carb proteins as the base of your meal. So fat proteins are your meat, fish, eggs, dairy. Carb proteins are your pasta, rice, baked potatoes, legumes, that kind of thing. And you can mix, but one of the things that I was trying to advise people to do was to not mix, because actually in nature, we don't get carbs and fat and protein in the same food altogether, with the exception of nuts and seeds. So it's kind of eat in a more natural way, eat in the way that we've evolved to eat. And we wouldn't have had that sort of feast on our plate that we put on the plate nowadays. And of course, people then very quickly realize that the fat meals, as I shorten them to, the meals based on meat, fish, eggs, and dairy are going to be more satiating, keep your blood glucose more even, make you crave food, less likely to do that, and you lose weight better and you lose weight faster. So it almost became a way in for people to transition from fearing fat and people doing low fat, high carb diets into kind of our world of more low carb, and then where you are, which is no carb.
Can I go back to the food tolerance
Yeah.
part of the three? So, are you saying that if we eat the same foods, that then we crave those same foods again? What did you specifically mean about that food
Yeah.
tolerance?
So when food addiction, I defined food addiction in my book as, let's use chocolate as an example for it. So at the first stage of food addiction, you want a particular thing. So in our example, you want chocolate. You don't want green beans and salmon, you want chocolate. In stage 2 of the addiction, you want more and more of that thing. So one bar of chocolate no longer cuts it. You find that you're skipping lunch and having chocolate instead, and then you want chocolate in the evening. So that's the second stage of addiction. You want more of that particular thing. Stage 3 is you actually start to feel bad when you don't have it. And that's when you're actually in the addiction phase. But that is also a description of food intolerance, that you actually get to the point that you're so reliant upon this food, you're having it so often that you will feel bad when you don't have it, because you're actually getting withdrawal symptoms from the food. It's giving you endorphins and it's giving you a physiological response in a number of different ways. That's stage 3. Almost no one deals with food addiction until it gets to stage 4. And stage 4 is something that concerns you. And of course, with food addiction, it's most likely to be overweight, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. And particularly, it's overweight and obesity before the type 2 diabetes. So women particularly, but now men just as much, get to the point that maybe they're 10, 20 pounds overweight from being addicted to that chocolate. And they get to the point of saying, whoa, my clothes don't fit anymore. I can't afford a whole new wardrobe. I need to do something about this. And then when they try to stop the chocolate, that's when they realize they've become addicted, because you go cold turkey on something that you've been having several times a day and you notice it, you get withdrawal symptoms. And they can be really quite unpleasant: headaches, fatigue, just feeling grumpy, grouchy, cravings for that particular food. So that's what people experience when they try to give up that food.
Okay. I asked specifically because in the carnivore space, most people eat the same meats and some people will eat the same one consistently. But is it that the food tolerance doesn't occur with meat because there's not that hypoglycemic blood sugar insulin resistance?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think it might do. And I do notice that people who go low carb, they can start craving something. So what I've noticed in phase 1 on the diet that I designed, which was, okay, here's it was the lowest common denominator. It went back to my maths experience again. So I basically said, okay, what would be the perfect diet for hypoglycemia? What would be the perfect diet for candida, gut flora? What would be the perfect diet for food intolerance? And it's basically at the lowest level, it was abbreviated by one author, I think it was Trowbridge, Dr. Trowbridge, to MEVI, which was meat/fish, eggs, vegetables/salads, and natural live yogurt. And the live yogurt is quite helpful for the candida and the gut flora. So it was that as a sort of basic level. And phase 1, I added in brown rice, or sort of a small amount of a safe grain, not least because I was vegetarian at the time. So I was looking at that thinking, okay, so I'm not eating meat and fish. I'm not having milk, and I'm not having the cheese that I normally would, because things like blue cheeses, moldy cheese, will actually feed the candida. So there are certain foods that you have to avoid. So I'm going to need to get some food into my diet. You're not even having fruit on phase 1, because fruit is very sugary. So that will feed the gut flora. It will upset hypoglycemia. So not least for that reason, I said, okay, we need a bit of brown rice or a bit of quinoa. But what I have noticed on phase 1 is that when people are craving something, and I think it is partly still the psychology of that food has been a prop for people for so long. So your boss is mean to you, you're thinking, what can I eat to cheer me up? Your kids are playing up, what can I eat to cheer me up? And then you remember you're on this diet, so you're not supposed to be having chocolate anymore. So you're looking around within what we can eat. People crave the dairy, or the thing that I most likely see them binge on is the natural live yogurt. And how much is that they start becoming intolerant to natural live yogurt because they start having that too much and too often? Yes, there's going to be an element of that. And how much is it that they're just trying to look for that prop, which is the role that food played? But I do think, and this is one of the reasons that I say to people when they start eating the way that I suggest that they should eat, don't fall into the trap of having the same things every day, because I think particularly when people's immune systems are not great, so let's say they have been eating badly, they've been craving carbohydrates, maybe they've been vegetarian or worse, vegan, plant-based, let's say somebody's not in good shape and then tries to cut out more and more foods. That's when I think you're at risk of developing intolerances to certain foods. And without naming names, there are people in our space who eat certain meats and not others.
Right.
And they have found that they've started having a problem with that particular meat or that particular fish or that particular vegetable. And I don't think that many people should have problems with those whole real foods if they're in the form that nature delivers them. So I do worry a bit when people cut back enormously, particularly when they might not be in a great immune place at the time of doing that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. We found in our practice that when they get down to maybe the single foods, maybe it's just beef or they're eating just chicken. And then when they start trying to add other things and they're hypersensitive, we find that the environment or maybe some other hidden toxin is in the body. And that's what is making their whole mast cell or their immune system full. And so initially the food, it's okay if I just reduce down to the bare basics, I feel better, but really it's just that there's something else going on in the body. At least that's what we find.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a good point as well. Yeah.
So in terms of your diet history, if you don't mind sharing, so you were plant-based. Did you decide to become plant-based because of your brother? How did that transition? And then when did you decide to stop being plant-based?
Yeah, so plant-based was kind of towards the end of being at university, and it's quite common, isn't it, that university students, and it wasn't plant-based, so I started off as vegetarian. So I was still eating dairy, milk, cheese, eggs.
Okay.
And my diet at college, again, like quite a few college students, wasn't great. It was kind of on the run, what you could afford. I was pretty sporty. I was musical. I was doing loads of studies. I had quite a complex degree course. So I was just on the go the whole time. So it was just too easy to grab a croissant or grab a chocolate bar or something or a bag of crisps. But we did get some very good meals in college as well, because they feed you really well at Cambridge. They look after you nicely. So if you go in for your evening meal, it really was, posh food. It was, people who go to Oxford end up being Prime Minister of the UK. So they feed them nicely. You'd have a nice roast lamb and vegetables, glazed carrots and all that kind of thing. So I had a mix of not eating well and eating well. Became more veggie because I just got to the point, I'm a real animal lover. And I got to the point that I was really struggling to eat animals. I wasn't so bothered about the milk comes from the cows, because particularly in the UK, the cows graze in the field and then they walk into the shed and they get milked and then they go back out in the field. So it's not the cruelty that we see in some of those vegan movies that come out of the US, where your cattle are in concrete sheds, they're not grazing in the fields as they do over here. So I didn't want to eat the animal. It wasn't that anything that came from an animal was bad. And gosh, that went on for quite some time. And then I met a partner in my 20s and we were together for quite some time. And I kind of didn't realize that he was even more plant-based than I was. And it sounds really daft that you don't kind of realize what you're eating, but I don't care much for cooking, and he did. So if somebody puts food in front of me, I'm super happy and I just eat it. And I look back and it was like, oh, it'd gone completely plant-based, hadn't it? I just hadn't realized. So almost every night would be sort of plant-based veggie burgers, brown rice, peas, a bun, brown bun to put the veggie burger in. And I kind of look back and think, yeah, the dairy had gone, the eggs had gone, the cheese had gone. Duh, why didn't I think? And I developed an eye problem really, really quickly. And I've since been in touch with Moorfields Eye Hospital. to say, you just got to ask the first question that you ask somebody who walks in your door, particularly college female or whatever, who's developed some unusual eye condition quite suddenly. Just ask them one question, which is, what's happened to your diet? Because for something to change, something must change. It's just a law of science. And it would have been so easy if they'd have said to me, has anything changed recently? And I'd have thought about it and go, do you know what? We don't have milk at home anymore. You know, I'm having dry cereal. There never seems to be any milk in the fridge. And the penny would have dropped. So about that time, I made sure I went back to being veggie. I then met my now husband, and I actually went to a Western Price conference in London in 2010, and I had the good fortune of seeing Sally Fallon Morell do one of the talks, and Barry Groves did another one of the talks. If you've not heard of Barry Groves, then Google Homo Carnivorous. And he's got a great presentation that's probably still up online somewhere, where he talks about how we've evolved to eat, and it's not cereal and blueberry muffins and that kind of thing. And I remember messaging my husband under the table saying, I'm coming back, not a veggie anymore. And of course he was thrilled because he wasn't a veggie. And that was it. I came home from that conference. It was just before Easter. I think Good Friday was the 2nd of April from memory. And I said, right, I'm going to pick that day. That's going to be the day I stop being veggie. Started straight away with red meat. We can cover that. I mean, chicken is just incomparable. Don't bother with chicken. You just got to go red meat. And my husband said the difference in me was almost immediate, in mood, monthly cycles, energy, skin color, just general well-being. And I never looked back. And I guess over the years since then, I'm still very much real food, not even particularly low carb. I guess certainly not compared to you, but compared to government guidelines, yeah, seriously low carb. So what would I eat on a typical day? Every day, meat or fish as the main meal. I do like salad and vegetables. I do like cheese. So dinner tonight, we put feta on the salad, so it's sort of extra cheese on anything green. I have Greek yogurt every day, milk every day, a few berries every day, eggs every day, dark chocolate every day. If I have chili in the winter, if Andy makes a nice big chili, there'll be kidney beans in there, and I'll probably have brown rice with it. But I could count on two hands the number of times that I would have brown rice in a year. So I don't fear carbs. I don't completely avoid them. They don't cause me any problems. They don't affect my weight. They don't affect my energy because my body can deal with them. But I just know every time I eat porridge, let's say, instead of eggs or yogurt for breakfast, it's not the healthiest thing that I could be doing. So I just don't do it too often.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. In terms of the eye condition you were developing, how quickly did that go away once you started including meat?
So I mean, the eye operations were in the late
Okay.
90s. So I started eating meat a good 10 years after that. But
Oh,
I didn't make the immediate connection. It wasn't until I saw Sally Fallon present, and she was actually presenting on vitamin A. And the minute I saw vitamin A comes in two forms, and retinol is the form that the body wants, and retinol is the form that is found in animal foods, and carotene is the form that's found in plant foods. And then more importantly, not everyone is a good converter.
right.
And the conversion rate is poor. And I was looking at it thinking, okay, so I'm a poor converter or a zero converter. I found that out the hard way. I ended up having two eye operations that in hindsight were completely avoidable. So I didn't make an immediate connection. I did have some eye trouble for a while. I think from memory, the thing that changed, being the HR director, and I was super young HR director at that time, and I remember somebody coming to me. Starbucks was Seattle Coffee Company, I think, was big in the US at the time, but we didn't have anything like that over in the UK. And I remember this guy coming into the building, and we had a lot of people in our particular site. And he said, do you think your employees would like it if I set up a coffee cart in the dining room, and then they can come and get a really nice cup of coffee at any time? And of course, it's a win-win because you've got happy employees. They're not leaving the building to go and get a rubbish coffee, which is all you could have got at the time in McDonald's or something. Happy employees. More alert employees because they're drinking coffee and all the rest of it. So I went for it, and it was delicious. I mean, it was proper local whole milk. I love coffee. I love cappuccinos. I love lattes. And I think that's what did it for me, because I was probably still having the plant rubbish served at home, but I was having half a dozen huge lattes during the day. So it didn't really matter what I was doing at home. It was making up for it in terms of the milk.
Okay, no, that makes so much sense. I wanted to pivot a little bit to a lot of the research you've done. And if no one that is listening or watching has watched some of your talks, I highly recommend it because they're entertaining, but you also learn a lot and you just break down a lot of the science in a way that's very observable. So I highly encourage people to watch that. In one of your talks, you talk about the game changers. I know when the movie first came out, everyone was like, I need to go plant-based. Look at the blood, that little experiment they did. Can you share a little bit about, what they shared in Game Changers? Is it true? What have you found from the research you've done?
So I did a complete takedown of Game Changers. So
Okay.
if you Google my name and CrossFit, so Greg Glassman, who was the head of CrossFit at the time
Okay.
Game Changers came out, he was incensed by it, and he organized a conference, and he's the kind of guy who, head of CrossFit, you've got the money to do that kind of thing. So he invited Gary Taubes, Michael Eads, Sarah Halberg, rest in peace, was there at the time, Dr. Asim Malhotra. Gosh, who else was there? There was a really good analytical guy, and his name escapes me at the moment. Georgia Reed was there. I mean, we just had the most amazing day. And Greg basically said, can you dissect Game Changers from your perspective? So Mike looked at it from a sort of anthropological perspective, which he does quite often, does really well. Georgia looked at it from a brain health perspective. And I looked at it from a, why would you be vegetarian? What are the arguments for being vegetarian, and why should you not be? So if you want the complete dissection, go and look at that. The experiment I draw out in that presentation, which I remembered more than the blood one, was actually the penis one. And they
Okay.
put in this contraption on men's manhoods and trying to claim that the night they had the bean burrito,
Right.
they had
That's right.
better erections than the night they had it's like, I mean, seriously, guys. But the whole movie was just completely cherry picking. So in that presentation, I did what they should have done, which is to say, okay, let's go back to the drawing board, which is what they should have done. Let's look at the totality of the evidence for a plant-based diet, because they were trying to say it was right nutritionally.
Mhm.
There are three arguments for following a plant-based diet. One is that it's better for your health. Two is that it's better for the animals, and three is that it's better for the planet. And they focused almost entirely on it's better for your health. So it'd be quite easy to go to PubMed, which is what I did, and say, right, let's look at the totality of the evidence for plant-based diets being best for things that count. So you start off with all-cause mortality, then you can look at things like heart disease or cancer or whatever. And there is just no flipping evidence. I mean, no wonder they pull out a study here and a study there, and they pulled out that terrible one by is it Dean Ornish or something? So I take that one apart. So the very visual blood experiment. So triglycerides, so what is showing up there in the blood, and what elevates triglycerides in the blood? Carbohydrates.
Mhm.
I think it was Elizabeth Park who did a great paper on this. I think from memory it's around 2002 or 2004, and she called it the paradox of hypertriglycemia, so high triglycerides in the blood. And she called it a paradox, as in when you're having fat, you don't get them, but when you're having carbohydrate, you do. And it's like, well, it's not a paradox to us. It's only a paradox to you because you've got it in your head that fat equals fat. If I eat fat, it's going to make me fat. If I eat fat, it's going to show up as fat in the bloodstream, but it just isn't. Fat is one of the main substances that we've evolved to eat. So it was just such a bad program. Oh, here's a athlete who's utterly gorgeous, and don't we all want to look like her? And oh, by the way, she's plant-based. Yeah, and she's probably been plant-based for 6 months, and see her in 2 years' time when she's like those vegan influencers on Instagram, when she's like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm not vegan anymore. It was just so bad, really bad.
Or of the studies that you looked at on PubMed, there wasn't a specific plant-based study that showed, hey, this is the way to eat because all-cause mortality, all the metabolic illnesses, that they have a leg up. You did not find anything like that.
No, and
Yeah.
as I say, I mean, this was 5 years ago, so I don't have the studies off the top of my head, but this is how I approach presentations. So if I'm asked to do a presentation on should we be vegan, then I go looking for all the evidence to say we should be vegan. I
Right.
asked the sort of null hypothesis kind of thing. Let's assume there's going to be tons of evidence that we should be vegan and let's go looking for it. And there just isn't any. And you won't have to look very far into the presentation. I think we had 20 minutes for each presentation. So you could watch the whole thing. Or even just in the first few minutes, I go through and say, okay, so this was the question I put into PubMed. This is what comes back. And then this comes back, and it's just nothing. It really is just nothing. And of course, there've been more papers over the last few years, but all they ever come up with, they're all epidemiological papers. All they ever come up with is, oh, there's an association between people who have plants in their diet and people who are super healthy. And you look at the types of people who are eating legumes and kumquat and quinoa and mangoes and that kind of thing. They're also highly educated and highly affluent and have good jobs and purpose in life and stable marriages and live in nice neighborhoods, and they have supportive family environments. They exercise. They just have everything else going for them. They don't smoke. They drink socially with friends. They are completely different people to the people who don't have any plants in their diet, who are probably living on McDonald's buy one, get one free burger with the bun, fries, shake, because it's the most calories you can get for the least money. And that's how some people have to approach their diet. It's just two completely different people. And they try to make you think, oh, if only the people with all the disadvantages in life, if only they ate the kumquat and the quinoa, they'd be as healthy as those guys over there. And it just isn't true.
Yeah, and after that movie came out, I saw that all the fast food restaurants in America start to carry like the Beyond Meat hamburgers, and they were $2 more than the just the regular burgers. And a lot of people that do go to fast food are the ones that are either really busy or struggling financially, and then they pay for the more expensive, less than ideal for your health food because they think they're making a good effort on their health, especially after watching that. And I know it's been some time since that movie came out, and now a lot of the companies are removing the Beyond Meats because they're just not selling. But in that moment, it was really unfortunate because people would buy a $7 burger that was so bad for you with seed oils and all the manufacturing of it versus a $5 burger that at least had real beef. And so it's just really unfortunate. And then, in terms of some of the vegetarian myths, while you were doing a lot of this research and even just your own experience, what are some of the vegetarian myths? It's hard to understand as just an average person going through our daily lives. And then maybe it's that the Mediterranean diet has a little bit more studies. It's still very plant-based friendly. But it just seems like everyone is in agreement that vegetarian diets are the way to eat for heart health and just if you want to be healthy and live long. And so, what are some of the vegetarian myths that you would say that are not true?
Okay, I'll come to those in just a minute.
Okay, okay.
I have to address that Mediterranean diet
Yes, yes,
thing to start
please.
with. And I've written blogs on this on my site. So if you Google Mediterranean diet on my site, you'll get my view of it. And it's not just my view of it. This is the truth.
Okay.
So I go to the Mediterranean every year, and I have done ever since I was 10 years old. Many years I go more than once. So I've already been twice to the Med this year, and I'm going to go another time before the end of the year. I can absolutely, hand on heart, tell you that you could sum up the Mediterranean diet, and the countries that surround the Med are France, Spain, Greece, Italy, Malta. So those are your countries that you're looking at in terms of Mediterranean diet. So you could sum up the Mediterranean diet by, particularly from the French cuisine, if it moves, eat it. So they eat everything. They eat frog's legs, they eat snails, they'll eat horse, they'll eat the most disgusting things that you probably would not want to eat. So the Mediterranean diet is massively based on animals, very heavy on meat, particularly red meat. You don't see chicken that often in the Mediterranean. They're very big on fish, obviously, because they're bordering the Med. So it's seafood as well as sort of normal fish like bass, or, they have so many different fish. If you go for the catch of the day on the menu, it could be anything, any one of about 200 fish. Cheese is massive in the Med. Yogurt is also very high. There's no such thing as a low-fat yogurt in the Med. It's proper Greek yogurt, and it's full-fat yogurt wherever you go, unless you're in a British supermarket. And eggs are commonly used, particularly in things like desserts. So you've got creme caramel or creme brulee or other desserts that would use eggs as well. They do embrace vegetables and salads. They're very creative with those, but they don't have the kind of massive salad that a dieter would sit down to in the UK. The main thing on your plate is the meat or the fish, and then you've got some green beans, or you might have a couple of slices of potato with cheese on them, gratin dauphinoise. The desserts are very much cream-based rather than sugar-based. It might be tarte tatin, which has got a whole load of apple, just a little bit of pastry, but that would then get served with vanilla ice cream or just real cream. They don't have any of that fake cream stuff. They have some fruit, but they don't eat anywhere near the fruit that we're told to eat. This 5 a day is obviously a myth. That is the real Mediterranean diet. So what researchers call the Mediterranean diet is a completely fictitious construct, and it's been constructed by researchers at places like Harvard, where they try to pretend it's high in whole grains, legumes, fruit, vegetables. That is complete and utter BS. You do not find a whole grain in the Mediterranean. I have looked for years. You do not find one. So French bread is white. Italian bread is ciabatta. It's white. Spanish don't eat bread quite so much. Their rice is white rice in risotto in Italy, white rice in paella in Spain. If they do eat any of the wheat-based stuff, the pasta, which is much more Italy than it is Spain or France, then it's white pasta. Lasagna is made with white pasta strips. Every grain is white. There are no whole grains in the Med. And if they have legumes, it may be a couple that are in a dish. So it might be a lamb tagine that has got a few chickpeas in it, but the base of the thing is lamb. So the Mediterranean diet, as studied in academia, is a completely fictitious construct. And the Mediterranean people are healthy because they have lots of sunshine. They have good working life balance. They have low stress relative to people on Wall Street and in London. And they eat real food. So, vegetarian myths. There is a brilliant book by that name called The Vegetarian Myth by Zoë Harcombe. And she puts it into 3 categories. And that's exactly what I have realized as well. So we concur that there are basically 3 reasons people go vegetarian. She calls them the 3 myths of being vegetarian, and we can call them that. Number 1 is that it's healthier for you. Number 2 is that it's better for the animals. And number 3 is it's better for the planet. So if we just quickly go through those, number 1, it absolutely is not better for you. So if you're going plant-based myth, so vegan myth, not just vegetarian. So let's take it to the extremes of you either eat animal foods or you don't. So if you're on a vegan plant-based diet, you are missing essential fats in the form that the body wants them. So omega-3s in the form of EPA and DHA, which are particularly found in fish, but are only found in that form in animal foods. You're missing B12, which is only found in animal foods. You're missing retinol, as I found out, which is the form that the body wants of vitamin A. You're missing D3, which is the form the body wants of vitamin D. Yes, you can get some in the sunshine, but we all can't get sunshine where we live for at least 6 months of the year because of seasons and nighttime. What else don't you get? Complete protein. You would have to combine, and you'd have to be very good at knowing what you combine to try to get that complete protein. Quite frankly, good luck, because you're not going to get anywhere close to getting what a steak would just deliver naturally. So the mere fact you're going to have to supplement on so many different nutrients just immediately tells you that is not how we've evolved to eat. That is not healthier for you. Interestingly, I never believed that. I never was vegetarian because I thought it was healthier for me. I knew enough to know that that wasn't true, even though I didn't know about the retinol. My view was I can be healthy enough for me and it's going to be better for the animals. And that's the really controversial one, but I was wrong on that one as well. So when you come to the animals, Zoë Keith opened with this story, and I couldn't quite work out why she was devoting so much time to it. So she talks about the fact that she's going to try and grow a lettuce. And then, of course, the slugs are trying to eat the lettuce. So for her to be able to eat the lettuce, she's going to have to do something. And what is she going to do? She's got to try to keep the slugs out, which indirectly is going to kill them because they're not going to get to her food. If you replicated that on a global scale, if you keep all the food away from the slugs, they're not going to be able to eat, so they die out. Of course, the reality is we end up putting down things like slug pellets, or we find ways of keeping them away from our food. So she stressed that story to demonstrate that there is nothing that we can produce for which something hasn't died. And the lettuce, of course, is not going to feed you. And where you get to with plant agriculture, and this is something that I did not want to admit as a vegetarian, and this will be something that no vegan wants to admit today. They will get quite hostile if you point this out to them. There's a brilliant academic paper by two guys called Fisher and Lamy, and it's called Field Deaths in Plant Agriculture. And they try to estimate how many animals are killed by just crop agriculture alone in the US. And they estimated about 7 billion animals. And you think, well, how can that be? I mean, picture the combine harvesters that we've got at the moment sweeping across the field. I mean, they're the size of football pitches in the sort of the span that they can cover across the field. And hoovering up in that wake, inevitably you're killing birds, and the birds swoop down whenever there's activity in the field because they want to get the worms. You turn around in the combine harvester and then you've got the birds on the way back. So you're killing birds, you're killing worms, you're killing snails, you're killing voles, you're killing mice, you're killing rabbits. I hate to say it, if you've got houses nearby, you're killing domestic cats if they didn't get out of the field in time when the combine started up. So there is nothing that people can eat for which nothing has died. And people just need to be honest about that. And if you then look at, well, what would kill the fewest animals, you're actually better off just one person eating one cow. You could get about 600,000 calories from one cow. That would be enough to feed one person over the year. If you look at the calories you get from a chicken, it's about 3,200. So you'd need about 228 chickens to get the same number of calories. You wouldn't then necessarily get the same nutrients. It wouldn't be as good at iron and zinc and B vitamins and all the rest of it. But there is nothing that plant-based people are eating for which something hasn't died. And they just need to accept that. And when you can accept that, then you can start questioning the animal reason for going veggie. And then the final one is people say it's better for the planet because cows, they say they fart, it's wrong, they burp. But then vegans burp. We exhale CO2. You know, if you believe the CO2 argument, which I actually don't, CO2 is utterly life vital. It's like cholesterol, we die without it. It just also happens to be something that's very lucrative to demonize. So I don't buy any of all that anyway. But if you do buy all of that, then there are still counter arguments. Termites produce a heck of a lot more methane than cows. So why are you going after the cows? Oh, because you don't want us eating red meat. You don't want us being healthy. You want us eating fake food because there's lots more money in fake food. And if we eat fake food, then we also need pharma. You know, I really do think it's that corrupt. It's the only possible reason for our dietary guidelines being as bad as they are.
What do you think is the most sustainable way for our health? Because a lot of people will say, well, if everyone just ate meat alone, we couldn't be able to provide that level of meat for everybody.
I don't know that we can't feed the planet
Okay.
on meat alone. I've not seen any research that says we can't. So if anyone's out there saying, well, we can't, then they need to make their case. Barry Groves, it was actually one of the things that he was looking at just before he died. And then there was a Danish guy who was going to pick it up, but I don't know if he did. So I haven't researched that, but I don't see why we couldn't certainly feed the world locally on real food. So if you're looking at the kind of way that Joel Salatin farms, if we were doing it in a regenerative agriculture way, you don't just have animals on the fields. You've got cows grazing, you've got chickens running around in the similar area, you've got pigs eating anything. You've got certain trees that thrive when they've got ruminants serving up the land and tilling the topsoil, and then you put crops in the next year. So there are ways of managing agriculture so that we can feed a lot of people. And I'm really not convinced that the way we're doing things at the moment is the right way. One of the things that's happening in the UK at the moment, which just utterly horrifies me, is in the name of the environment, they are taking away farmland and covering it with solar panels and wind farms. And whatever you think of CO2, even if you think CO2 is a thing and we actually need to move to what they call renewable energy, what I call unreliable energy, what people don't seem to realize is because that energy is unreliable, you must always have 100% reliable energy available. And this is such an important point for everyone to get in their head. So because you can never guarantee that the sun is going to shine, for at least 50% of the year, it's not going to shine. We've got night, we've got seasons. And you can never guarantee that the wind is going to blow, particularly overnight in the UK, it hardly ever blows, and our wind is too strong or not strong enough. So you can never rely on that energy, which means at any one time you have to have 100% of your energy need available from a reliable source, which is nuclear, coal, or gas. And that will never change. So when people say, oh, we managed to achieve 80% of our need today came from wind and solar, I just say, well, that's completely irrelevant, because you still needed 100% available in gas and coal, because you could not guarantee that the sun was going to shine or the wind was going to blow. Just couldn't guarantee it. So unless you were prepared for the hospitals to have to turn off the dialysis machines and the coma machines, and for the factories to shut down, you had to have it available. So it's just completely and utterly insane to be taking farmland away when that could be used for regenerative farming to get us more self-sufficient. But again, it's not what they want. They're already growing vegetables upside down in greenhouses in the UK with the lush green lands that we've got, the fields that we've got, the hillsides that we've got, the rain that we have. There is absolutely no reason for that. And that's all so-called in the name of saving the planet. I can only conclude that this is just one gigantic lie that we've been told, because they don't want to see it in the things that make us healthy. If they did, the dietary guidelines would be eat meat, fish, eggs, dairy, green things, some berries in season or seasonal fruits, and that's about it. Legumes if they're indigenous to your population, which they're not to us. I mean, they come from Morocco or Mexico or whatever, so they're not.
It's hard when I'm in the same space that you're in and you see all of this dietary recommendations. We had a friend that was he was 39 and had a heart event and did some type of bypass. And so then I sent him a heart health book, low carb, how saturated fats aren't bad for you, but his cardiologist wants him on a low carb or a low fat diet, and then eating all the grains. And he's so scared for his life that he's willing to listen to the doctor, and the doctor has it all wrong. And it is so pervasive, and a lot of the things that you mentioned is so true. And even in my research, and you can't help but wonder if there's an evil. Some people, I've argued with some people in my personal life where they'll talk about Bill Gates and all the wonderful things he does for humanity. And, he invests in plant-based and he buys the farmlands to grow more of his plant-based, whatever he's growing. And I know how smart he is. And if he's that smart, there's no way that he just doesn't understand the fundamentals of nutrition. It's not just that he's just driven by money. I really think that he knows that this is wrong, yet is still really following it. And it's unfortunate because, as you mentioned, it does bring a lot of money, but it also causes so much harm in all of us. And it's just a travesty. And it sometimes feels like, how do we fix this? Like, you being in this space and for so long, how do you see us really, changing the tide with our dietary recommendations so that the average person that's so busy, I partially think it's part of our upbringing in schools where we stop critical thinking and stop thinking, well, that's weird. If all depression is from, low serotonin, you would think that everyone that then takes serotonin would not have depression anymore. Or you would think that if it really was the saturated fats and then we're removing it all this time and going to low fat, how come heart disease is not stopping in its prevalence? And that level of critical thinking would make us start to question things. But, from a very young age, especially in the US, we are asked not to question, and we just listen to the teacher. We raise a hand to go to the restrooms. So I do think some of that's part of the issue. But how do you see this overwhelming mountain that we have to climb change?
Okay, again, just before I do that, I've got to address the Bill Gates thing.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not a fan of Bill Gates. So
Me
Bill
too.
Gates invests. He invests in these burgers things, then he promotes them,
Right.
then he makes lots of money, and then he sells out. So he's actually not in some of those things at the moment. And if you look at when he got into them and when he got out of them and how much he made in the interim, he's a businessman. He just wants to make money. He actually now wants more than money. He wants power because he's getting involved in world health in a way that he's not qualified to do.
Totally.
And quite frankly, it's megalomaniacal, the involvement that he's got in world health at the moment. So it's very serious. I also happen to know somebody who worked direct for him, and Bill Gates loves steak. I would suggest that one of the reasons he's buying up farmland in the US is to make sure that he's never going to run out of steak. He might be okay if we do, because they might invent this bird flu thing, and how bird flu then transmits to cows, I don't know, but they're already looking at killing birds, and then they're looking at killing cows. And if that's not removing the real food that we want to eat, I don't know what is. It's almost as if they've tried all the Harvard publications, plants are better for you, and we're just not buying it. And we're carrying on eating meat. So they're probably now at the stage of, well, what do we do to get these guys to stop eating meat? Because telling them to stop eating meat is not working. Telling them to eat whole grains and legumes and fruits and vegetables is not working. In fact, they're probably looking over and saying, not only is it not working, there's more of these low carb people. It's like they're growing. We can't sort of suppress them. They're sort of growing in number. And that brings us to what we are actually doing at the moment. And I know you interviewed a really good friend of mine recently, Nina Teicholz. So I kind of picture it as a sort of a pyramid, not the food pyramid, but a pyramid of how we're going to do something about this. Now, at the top of the pyramid is where Nina is working. And what she's trying to do, and all hats off to her for this, she's trying to get the dietary guidelines changed. Because if we could get those changed, it would have the single biggest impact beyond anything that could ever happen. If they woke up one morning and said, oh my goodness, do you know what? We got that whole low fat, high carb thing completely wrong. It should be the other way around. Ditch the whole grains, eat the meat, fish, eggs and dairy, a few green things, fruits in season, and you'll be slim and healthy for life. It would transform everything. We would no longer have to have conversations like this. You and I would be out of business, and I'd be quite happy with that. At the bottom is kind of what's happening at the moment. And you've got a bottom-up revolution, I call it. So you've got ordinary people, and maybe like your friend who tragically has just had such a serious event at such a young age, and things won't get better on the low-fat, high-carb diet. He won't lose weight. He'll still have high blood glucose. He'll still be panicking. And at some point he will listen to you, or he might listen to a doctor who is saying what you're saying. So suddenly it's like, okay, it's a white coat, but they're saying what my friend Judy is saying. And it might then click. That's the bottom-up revolution. That's when you see the friend you haven't seen for a while, and it's like, oh my goodness, you look amazing. What have you been doing? Oh, I lost 30 pounds. I've just completely cut out starchy things and beige things. I feel great. I've got loads of energy, not diabetic anymore. And they then tell another two people, and that's the bottom-up revolution. Now, the bit we have to put as much effort into as possible, and I like to think you and I are at this level, sort of a part way up the pyramid. You've got a platform, think of it like the Eiffel Tower. You've got sort of that platform, which is people who can impact a lot of people. So it's not just the person who sees their friend that they haven't seen for a while, but it's the influencers, it's the doctors, it's the Robert Sivers who've got a practice in Florida, and they might see 1,000 patients over the year during that practice. So instead of influencing one or two, they're influencing 1,000. Or if you have 100,000 followers on YouTube, you've got a chance to influence those 100,000. And that's the exciting part of what is going to change this. And that's largely where the conferences, I think, are pitched at. So when you've got things like Low Carb USA, Low Carb Down Under, the stuff that Doug Reynolds does, the stuff that Sam Feltham does in the UK, they're very much pitched at doctors and, I mean, academic doctors like me, or medical doctors like Dr. Asim Malhotra or Jeffrey Gerber or Jay Wortman, Robert Sivers, as I've said, Michael Eads, medical doctors, Mary's. Those people presenting to conferences or doing blogs that are read by a lot of people, or doing YouTube videos that are, I mean, some of Jason Fung's videos have been seen by millions of people. And that's a doctor, proper doctor, standing up saying, don't eat the way that the government is telling you to eat. Otherwise, you'll end up with kidney disease and diabetes, and you'll end up being a patient of mine. And that's the really exciting level, because that is accelerating it. We need Nina to keep working up at that top level, because if she can achieve change there, we can all just take the rest of the time off. But I don't think that's going to happen. She came to stay with us recently, and we have this debate all the time. Nina, they're so corrupt, they're never going to change. But she won't give up, and I really admire her for that. But we just got to get that middle layer going as much as we can. The more doctors we can get on board, the more influencers, the more bloggers, YouTubers, video makers, podcasters. That's when we reach more and more people. And then they all become the one or two at the bottom up revolution. I heard this podcast by Judy and it inspired me, and I completely changed my diet. And I did this, and then my wife followed, or my neighbor followed. And that's how we do it. But I just wish they'd change it at the top and just speed the whole thing up.
Yeah, if they changed it from the top, it would benefit then the dietary changes in our hospitals, our jails, our
Yes.
schools, the mandates that they have in all the other places that are funded by the government and their dietary. So that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I also think it's so corrupt that I don't see how that will change very quickly. So I've been in this space for probably 5 years now. And what I do see is for a lot of the people that aren't convinced, especially in my personal life, you just plant a seed and then it just requires maybe a couple people around them. So the healing stories that, oh, you've lost so much weight, or you're not taking diabetic meds anymore, what happened? And then when they share their story, that person that has the seed planted but is not yet willing to change, in a moment of desperation, I think that's when they're like, let's just try it, because
Yeah.
whatever I'm doing today is not working. And if they just try it for 30 days and they see the changes, they become a believer. And then all we need to do is like flip that for every single person. And I do see that. It just sometimes feels like we are climbing this really, really hard mountain. And it would be one thing if the meat will be in abundance, but it just also seems like now they're trying to take away our meat. It's like there's always some new hurdle, but I do believe the people can change. I mean, that is why to this day we don't have Coke in our Coca-Cola. So I am still hopeful. What about the dietary stuff about fiber? We always, that's one of the biggest fears I hear, especially because I focus on gut health. They'll ask me, well, but a carnivore diet or a low carb diet doesn't have sufficient fiber. So what are your thoughts? Do we need fiber? The research on fiber?
No, we don't need fiber. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. So of the three macronutrients, fat, protein, and carbohydrate, we don't need carbohydrate. We don't need to ingest any anyway. The body will make enough glucose for the brain. We have this process called gluconeogenesis. Our favorite quote, and Dr. Eric Westman uses this quote as well. I can get you the exact source, but if you Google, I think it's 2005, the panel on macronutrients, there's a great quote that says something like, the dietary requirement for carbohydrate is 0, provided enough fat and protein are consumed. So we need no carbohydrate whatsoever. So start from that holding position. That is a nutritional fact. And then work out what fiber is. So carbohydrates 101, you've got what we call single sugars. They're called monosaccharides. That's your glucose, fructose, and galactose. Then you've got two sugars, disaccharides. To give you an example of those, sucrose is a disaccharide. It's one molecule of fructose and one molecule of glucose. Lactose is another disaccharide, that's glucose and galactose. And then maltose has got two glucose molecules. So those are your disaccharides. Then you have polysaccharides, which is just many sugars. So immediately you should be thinking, well, hang on, carbohydrates 101. All I'm hearing is the word sugar. Single sugar, two sugars, many sugars. Yeah, carbohydrates are sugars. That's all they are. They are sugars. They break down into sugars. So you're into many sugars, and you've got many sugars of the digestible kind, and that would be starch in plants or glycogen in humans. And then you've got many sugars of the indigestible kind, and that's the definition of fiber. So fiber is indigestible polysaccharides, indigestible many sugars. So it's many sugars that we can't digest. So are you now thinking this is something that I really must be getting in my diet, when you reframe it as what it actually is? And of course the answer is no, because see fact 1, you don't need carbohydrates at all. If fiber is a subset of carbohydrate and you don't need carbohydrate, then you don't need fiber. So there is no requirement for fiber whatsoever. I mean, there just isn't. Then you should ask the question, if you're doing research, okay, you don't need it, but is it good for you? Which is the question that I asked in a fiber presentation that I did. And the answer to that is completely underwhelming as well. So you go back and look at the evidence. What's the RCT evidence? There's pretty much only one that was large enough and long enough. That was the DART study which had a three-way intervention with fish, fat, and fiber. And the groups that were given fiber actually had more deaths and more heart deaths than the groups that weren't given. Wasn't statistically significant, but there was no trend saying that this was going to be a good idea. That's the only one that was large enough and long enough. It was over about 2 years. I think it had 2,000 men. Women have never been studied. You can look at the Cochrane evidence, which I do in my presentations. That just says further research is needed. The most they ever come back with is you're back to that family who eat fiber and the family who don't eat fiber. And the family who eat fiber have got everything else going for them. And they say, oh, we adjusted for all of that. You can't adjust for a whole person. There is no requirement for eating fiber. I can find no evidence from trial evidence that it's actually good for us. Then people say, oh, but it's all about the microbiome. Again, your microbiome is helped by many things. And I would argue that beans on toast is the absolute last thing that's going to help your microbiome. Things that help your microbiome: your parents being healthy. Sorry, you couldn't do anything about that. Your mum giving birth naturally. Ditto, you couldn't help that. But it's interesting to know if she did. Your mum breastfeeding for as long as possible. Mum and dad didn't give you antibiotics as a child, or only if your life depended on it. And hopefully that didn't happen. You're not having antibiotics, again, unless your life depends on it as an adult. And if you do, you take probiotics alongside so that you're countering that. And then there are loads of animal foods, things like blue cheese, kefir, natural live yogurt, absolutely chocker with lactobacillus and natural live cultures that populate the gut, and the gut is really happy to feed off those. Seriously, bread with 50 ingredients and baked beans with sugar and goodness knows what else are absolutely no good for your gut whatsoever. Your gut is going to be perfectly happy if you just live naturally, do the right natural things, and eat some of the natural foods from the animal kingdom that will naturally help your gut flora. And at the end of the day, fiber just produces waste. It's that indigestible many sugars. So yeah, a vegan is going to spend a lot more time on the loo and get through a lot more loo paper and block the toilet a lot more than the carnivore in the next room at college. But why do you want to produce loads of waste?
Right. And I also think just from our practice, so we'll run stool tests for people that have some types of gut conditions that are not resolving with carnivore, and we'll do a stool test. And they're in the stool test, they have a section for the breakdown of short chain fatty acids, which is propionate, acetate, and butyrate, which are the reasons why they argue to eat fiber. And I will say, of the hundreds that we've run, some carnivores are high, and you would think, well, where are you getting your fiber from? And some are low, and some are within range. And just from our clinical practice, we've seen there's no real rhyme or reason why people's short chain fatty acids are high or low. And so I think there's still more research that needs to be said. But like you said, they will go after the people that are super healthy, although it could be just a healthy user bias, and say, okay, look, they eat fiber, so therefore fiber must be healthy. But we have not seen, there was not a single person that we needed to say, you need to take fiber to support your gut microbiome. And we have seen so many shifts. Yes, we may recommend probiotics, but we do not have to recommend the pre and the post, as which are a lot of the fiber. So I totally back up what you're saying. If someone were watching this and they're more plant-based, or they're not eating a lower carb diet, and maybe they're more vegan or even vegetarian, I don't know if they'd be watching this, but if they were, what are some recommendations? Because we also get messages of, I went from being vegan or vegetarian to try to eat carnivore, and it did a number on me. Do you recommend like a slower transition?
Oh, I mean, I'm trying to remember back when I did it, actually. And as I say, I just started eating meat, felt better, ate a bit more meat. I think sort of going from vegan to carnivore is a bit extreme.
Right.
I think sort of going somewhere along the way. So putting in more animal foods, and then naturally you'll be replacing some of the plant foods. So it'll be some things coming in. It's kind of like a crowd out strategy. So let's be crowding out those whole grains. And think about each meal. So let's crowd out the cereals with eggs, or bacon and eggs if you're up for it at breakfast, or Greek yogurt and berries if bacon and eggs seems to stretch too far. Crowd out the sandwich at lunch, because that's not doing you any favors, or any of these sort of pasta salads, potato salads. Just keep crowding out those carby beige meals with things that are more nutrient dense. learn about nutrition, which is why so many people who do change their diet do become really interested. They're the kind of people that come along to conferences and spread the word, because they just do become so interested in it. And I think the more you learn about it, the more you'll realize I love spreadsheets. I mean, I was just doing spreadsheets years ago of, okay, let's take 100 grams of meat and 100 grams of lentils and 100 grams of apple and 100 grams of sunflower seeds, and then just look at the things that we need. So we need essential fats, we need complete protein, we need 13 vitamins, we need questionable how many minerals, but we can agree on many of them, around 16, iron, zinc, copper, manganese, selenium, sodium, potassium, all those kind of things. And just, you can do this off the United States Department of Agriculture All Foods database, make your own little spreadsheet, and then just compare them. And then just circle the one in the row that is above all the others, and it will be liver. It will be some kind of offal. I mean, chicken liver or lamb's liver or any kind of liver, I've always found to be the single healthiest food per 100 grams of raw foods combined that you can possibly find. And it then starts people thinking, because they're told you should eat 5 a day, fruit is so healthy. And then they kind of look at the apple and they look at the red meat and they're like, the apple just doesn't have anything.
Right.
I mean, the apple is just sugar. There's no essential fats. There's no complete protein. There's no B vitamins. Oh, it's actually got less vitamin C than liver. I mean, some things astound you when you start playing with things like that, things that you just really didn't expect to find. And then you just realize that everything they've been telling you about nutrition is wrong. And then you challenge the next thing. And it's like, so, okay, so if we don't need fiber and carbs are not good and we shouldn't fear red meat, then what else did they tell me? Vegetable oils I should be eating instead of saturated fats. Well, that one's wrong as well. 5 a day, that's a fairy story. Alcohol units, that's fairy story too. They're all just made up. So I think when you start challenging one, you realize you just got to challenge the whole lot. And then you get angry, and then you tell other people. And then you and then you join our tribe, which is great, because we like angry, passionate, talkative people who convert other people.
It's funny because I did the same thing. So since I was part of consulting, I worked on a lot of presentations and spreadsheets, and I just used that same logic to start plugging into, because I wanted to understand. I was 12 years plant-based, mostly vegetarian, and then added a little bit of fish here and there, but it was very little. And I ate low fat. So it was just a disaster. And then I wanted to know, like, how could meat fix me so much, not even requiring medications? And then when I used the hat that I had in consulting of presenting data and graphics, and it just made so much sense. So like you said, I think if you just were to go into the USDA and use their data, it would still share the story that meat is the most nutritious, because numbers are numbers. And some people will say, well, avocados and broccoli, they are very high in nutrients too, but that's where the conversion gets affected. So we don't consider anti-nutrients or the pesticides they spray, or the conversion of, if broccoli has certain nutrients, some of them are not in its most bioavailable form, or you need good gut function to use any of the nutrients. So a lot of those things are not talked about. But if we just put on our logical hat and we pursue nutrition like we do with our finances, or we do with our jobs or our studies, it would make so much sense, because everything we eat either is a friend to us or a foe. And we don't consider that until, unfortunately, our health takes a hit. And then we start wondering what's going on. And then the veil is lifted where, okay, what else is being lied to us? But I love the work you do. Where can people find your books, your talks, and in your website, your newsletter, your Substack?
Yeah, I don't do Substack.
Okay, you don't do Substack? Okay.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I do my own newsletter. So
Okay.
we started doing this, gosh, back in 2009. So I've done something called a Monday Note
Okay.
pretty much every Monday apart from Christmas for 15 years or so. So I'm almost at number 700. And I take a paper. So this week I'm looking at one in the UK that's saying, oh, we put people on an 800 calorie a day liquid meal replacement diet, and we managed to put their type 2 diabetes into remission. This was a study that was done a few years ago, but a paper has just been published that's followed up on it. And like, oh, look, a couple of % of people have still got their diabetes in remission. It's like, Okay, so if they'd have gone low carb, if they'd have joined the Verta study, almost all of them would still have been in remission because they wouldn't have to starve themselves. Their hair wouldn't be falling out. They wouldn't have low energy. It's just, so it's crazy. So that's this week's one. So that's what I do. So it's just zoeharcombe.com. I don't know if it doesn't have it. Does it up on the Zoom
I'll
thing?
put it in the show
Yeah,
notes.
you can put it. So it's just my name, zoeharcombe.com for the website. On Twitter, I'm at Zoë Harcombe. I don't do Instagram or Facebook or the other things. Books, I mean, they're out there. They're old now, as they say. The first one I wrote 20 years ago, Stop Counting Calories, was written back in 2008. I did one on what caused the obesity epidemic in 2009. So I'd say, don't worry about those. You'll be able to find things that I write online. And by the way, broccoli was one of the foods that I studied, and it's just not all that. It doesn't matter how you look at it. It's not that we don't digest it or we can't extract the nutrients from it. They're just not there in the first place. Again, it was one that I compared with sardines for an oily fish, or steak for a red meat. There's no plant that can hold a candle to an animal food. If you're trying to win a nutrient competition, just don't ever pick a plant. You've lost already. Sorry, guys, but it's true.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I will put
That's okay.
your newsletter as well as I'll put some of the talks that I saw, which were very powerful.
Yeah.
And it does
I'll
a lot
send you
of
a link, and then they
yes.
can see all the talks. I think
Okay,
most of them
perfect.
are on my site, so I'll send you a link,
Yeah,
and then
because
you'll have them all in one place.
I've seen some of your graphics where you'll do that micronutrient where you'll highlight the specific one that's very high or that the plow that you mentioned. So the
Yeah.
visualizations I think are so much more powerful. So I will absolutely put that in the links. But thank you so much again for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and good luck with all you do. And I'm sure we'll speak again.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Cheers,
Uh-huh.
Judy.
Okay, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this interview. I think the one thing that Zoë brought up that I really appreciated is how if every single one of us were to heal with a low carb, meat based carnivore diet, and then we share that, we can really change the tide. While it seems like we have this insurmountable obstacle in front of us with big food, big pharma, big everything, we can still change the way things are. There were vaccine mandates and vaccine passports that were going to be required of us. There were ways that they are trying to take away our meat. But if we take a stand and the population shares that, no, this is not okay, those things cannot happen. So I hope as you hear these interviews, it gives you motivation and the tools to share why a low carb diet, high fat, meat based diet is so beneficial for us, and then help your fellow neighbor heal. And then let's all take that so that we can have change for the rest of the world. Okay, guys, make sure to eat a lot of meat, take care of your bodies because it is the only place you have to live. I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.